If you ask someone to picture a Mexican luchador, they usually think of a superhero. A pristine mask, colorful spandex, and graceful dives through the air. José Julio Pacheco Hernández is none of those things. He's a manic face-painted brawler forged in the brutal underground death matches of the border. He took the trauma of a bullied kid from Juarez and weaponized it into an armor of pure violence, dragging the traditional world of Lucha Libre into a warzone of barbed wire and flaming tables. He is Pagano. And this is the story of how a punk rock misfit forced an entire industry to accept him on his own unapologetic terms. Ciudad Juárez is a border town defined by its resilience. But for a young boy named José Julio Pacheco Hernández, the streets were just a gauntlet. Long before he became the face-painted brawler known as Pagano, Julio was an outcast. Dealing with childhood drama and bullying, he was the kid who just didn't fit in. But every Sunday, that reality faded. His father would take him every week to the José Neri Santos gymnasium. Sitting in the bleachers, watching larger-than-life luchadores dive through the air, he found his sanctuary. For a few hours a week, the pain didn't exist. You can't hide in a sanctuary forever, though. At 11 years old, Julio found another type of salvation, the underground punk rock. The aggressive, hardcore subculture wasn't just music, it was an identity. It taught Julio a lesson that would define his career. It is okay to be the outcast. In fact, you can weaponize it. But attitude alone won't keep you safe in Juarez. Julio stepped into the gym, training in boxing and kickboxing just to learn how to defend himself. It's then that he learned how to take a hit, how to endure. He didn't realize it, but the streets were conditioning him for something much bigger. Carrying the rebellious spirit of a punk rocker and the bruised knuckles of a street fighter, his eyes drifted back to the Lucha Libre ring. The outcast was ready to fight back. But stepping into Lucha Libre wasn't a grand career move to Julio. At first, it was just about proximity. He went to a training ring in the tough neighborhood of La Mariscal simply to be near his idols. He was just a scrawny punk rock fan trying to peek behind the curtain. But the ring tests your spirit. The grueling conditioning and the bumps on a stiff canvas weed out the weak. Julio didn't have a superhero physique, but he had a staggering threshold for pain and a refusal to quit. This grit caught the eye of his teacher, the legendary Baby Sharon. Don't let the flamboyant exotico style fool you. Baby Sharon was a tough, old-school enforcer who demanded respect for the sport. When others looked at Julio and saw a directionalist kid, Sharon saw raw passion. He took Julio under his wing, even publicly declaring he wouldn't retire from training until El Güero, the pale kid with the punk attitude, made his official debut. It's probably thanks to this man that we have a Pagano today. Julio has said that as an insecure kid who didn't believe he would amount to too much, there's a moment he won't ever forget. One night at a bar sitting alone, Baby Sharon sat next to him. And Julio heard him say something to the woman who accompanied him. He said, "This guy is the hardest worker I know. He comes in early and gives it his all. I have no doubt he will make it big in this industry." Julio couldn't believe someone had so much faith in him, because not even he believed in himself that much. He was motivated to keep training even harder than before after that. But when his debut happened, the Pagano we know today wasn't born overnight. Like many young luchadores, he started under a traditional mask, trying to fit the standard mold. But playing by their rules felt restrictive. It wasn't until he lost that mask early in his career that the chains came off. Stripped of the traditional spandex, Julio embraced his roots. Channeling the hardcore shows of his youth, he painted his face not as a mystical warrior, but as a manic clown. He brought the violence of the mosh pit into the squared circle, finding his true home in the independent extreme scene, most notably in Juarez's Arena Calaca. This wasn't chain wrestling, this was survival. Barbed wire, light tubes, and shattered glass became his canvas. He took unimaginable punishment, earning a name that would echo throughout Mexico, El Rey Extremo. By 2016, the legend of the clown from Juarez had grown too loud for the underground. And that's when Lucha Libre AAA came calling. But Pagano didn't arrive politely, and he didn't ask for permission to be a star. Arriving alongside the faction La Familia Fronteriza, Pagano bypassed the mid-card and targeted the main eventers. National television audiences were suddenly exposed to a raw brand of violence the traditional AAA ring wasn't prepared for. In a promotion famous for colorful high flyers, Pagano brought a punishing, strong style and hardcore elements that shocked the system. This edge birthed some of the most brutal rivalries in modern Lucha Libre. He dragged extreme wrestling pioneer Nicho el Millonario, or some of you may know him as Psicosis, into a bloodbath that felt like a violent passing of the torch. He forced the polished heavyweight El Mesías down into the trenches as well. But nothing showcased the reality and danger of Pagano's career quite like a terrifying, unscripted moment in February 2023. During an independent show at the Gimnasio Juan de la Barrera, chaos broke out when two unknown hooded attackers invaded the ring. They tied Pagano's hands and delivered a devastating botched martinete, a banned pile driver, straight onto a steel chair. The arena fell silent as the horrific impact caused spinal cord compression, leaving half of Pagano's body paralyzed in the ring. He required emergency spinal surgery and eventually recovered, but it was a chilling reminder. The extreme in El Rey Extremo wasn't just a gimmick. The danger is always one wrong move away. In Lucha Libre, there are no higher stakes than a lucha de apuestas. To lose your mask or your hair is the ultimate humiliation. But for a brawler who had already sacrificed his body, putting his hair on the line was just another excuse to amplify the violence. His rise in AAA took him to Triplemania 24 against the face of the company, Psycho Clown. It was a mask versus hair, but also a clash of philosophies. The hero of the people versus the invader from the border. After a massacre involving steel chairs, thumbstacks, and flaming tables, the hero prevailed. Pagano's hair was shaved in the middle of the ring. But sitting there bald, battered, and bleeding, Pagano didn't look like a loser. He looked like a martyr. That night, he proved he was a legitimate main event draw capable of carrying the biggest show of the year. 4 years later, Pagano found himself in another lucha de apuestas at Triplemania 28 against the veteran Chessman. Fought in December 2020 during the height of the pandemic, the massive arena Ciudad de Mexico was hauntedly empty. For a wrestler whose adrenaline feeds off the crowd, the silence was a psychological test. Yet, they tore each other apart, culminating in a terrifying bump of the stage through a structure of tables. Pagano took Chessman's hair, but more importantly, he proved his chaotic charisma could translate even through the television screens of an isolated world. In professional wrestling, the landscape changes overnight. And in April 2025, the walls dividing promotions shattered when WWE officially acquired Lucha Libre AAA. The eyes of the wrestling world were hyper-focused on Mexico. When WWE's brass looked at the AAA roster, they saw a face-painted brawler commanding the visceral devotion of the audience. Pagano had stepped into the global radar. This changing of the guard shifted locker room allegiances. Shared bloodshed forges deep bonds. And after taking each other to the limit in the past, a profound respect had blossomed between Pagano and his ultimate rival, Psycho Clown. Realizing they were unstoppable together, the two biggest marquee attractions in AAA united to defend the greedy pride of their promotion against the invading forces of the new regime. This set the stage for a massive collision in August 2025 at Triplemania 33. And what was the battleground? A street fight. Pagano and Psycho Clown stood face to face with the sleek, dangerous duo of Angel and Berto. For the invaders, it was about proving the dominance of the WWE machine in their home country. But for Pagano, a street fight was just a return to his roots. The outcast who bled in the barbed wire rings of Juarez was now swinging weapons on a global stage. And by the end of the bloody war, Pagano and Psycho Clown didn't just defend AAA's honor. They defeated Angel and Berto to capture the AAA World Tag Team Championships. José Julio Pacheco Hernández is more than a man in face paint wielding a barbed wire bat. He took the trauma of a bullet kid from Ciudad Juárez and weaponized it into an armor. He didn't conform to the pristine mold of a Mexican superhero. He forced the industry to accept a punk rock misfit. Pagano represents every kid they were told they were too loud or too different, proving you don't have to fit in to become an icon. You just need to stay unapologetically true to who you are. I hope you liked this video. Let me know in the comments what you think about Pagano. Is he someone you have followed for many years, or are you just discovering Pagano? My name is Eric. You can follow me to learn more about Lucha Libre, and I will see you in the next video.